morning. Wow. Yesterday I said good morning and it was like good morning. And you guys on a Sunday morning are vibrant, so thank you for that. My name is Karen Kennedy. I am, among other things, the founder and owner of 24/7 Artist Development, which is a jazz management firm. I'm also the current president of NAPAMA and will be ending my term tomorrow. I am very happy to welcome you all to what is called Rapid Response Advocacy. Skill building for urgent moments. And if we're not living in an urgent moment, I don't know what we are. So we're going to address a number of things today, but primarily it's about preparation. How do we look at what's in front of us, but know already how to meet the moment? I'm going to introduce the panel in a minute. Oh, thank you. Thank you, sir. Great. We're going to attempt to cover four sort of pillars of this topic, one of which is preparing before the moment, clarity under pressure, turning crises into leverage, and mobilizing the right voices quickly. To have this conversation, we have two very esteemed people with us. I want you to welcome them both now. Cuya Jones, who is from the Broadway Advocacy Coalition. She is a storyteller, a fundraiser, which should sound familiar to everyone in this room, and a mother with 20 years of experience in nonprofit leadership. Before joining Broadway Advocacy Coalition, Els led the All Women of Color development team at North Star Fund, a community foundation that supports grassroots organizing for social justice. So please welcome Els. And on my left, I'm going to give you, I'm going to tell you what she does, and I'm going to tell you something else. Nina Ozlu-Tunceli, Chief Counsel of Government and Public Affairs at Americans for the Arts, as well as the Executive Director of the Americans for the Arts Action Fund, the latter, which is the activist division, and I do underscore activists, and it's the only PCA to advance policy on behalf of artists. I'm going to tell you why she's important to all of us. Do you remember what happened 5 years ago when everyone thought the bottom was falling out of not just the world, because it was, but also the arts, when we entered into the pandemic and then we lived there for a long time, and the realization came about that we were not going to get back to touring, we were not going to get back to performance, we were not going to get back to work. And we were struggling, trying to figure out how are we going to pay mortgage, how are we going to keep people involved, how are we going to keep people connected. And this woman, Nina, was became our net, our hand, our guide, our resource, our maternal, paternal sibling figure, in how she advocated first for the venues who have been affected by the closure through the SVOG, and then for artists and for managers and agents. She lobbied for all of us and found ways for the government to help us, and then found ways for us to help ourselves. And through her guidance and her patience and her commitment and her dedication and her intelligence and her tenacity, and I'm going to go on because there are not enough good verbs to describe how this woman helped us to be here today. So I want you to welcome Nina. Thank you. So, with that, I hope you guys know that this is going to be a two-way conversation. You're going to be able to ask questions, and we want to pay attention to what is on your mind, as well as to providing you with some information and some tools. So let's start with the first sort of nugget here. How do we prepare before the moment happens? How do we see what's coming? Urgent moments don't arrive with notice. We have to know, we have to be ready for when they come. So what are some of these foundational tools? Whether they're messages, whether they're relationships, whether they're frameworks that you've created, what are these things that we can do in advance? Organizations as well as small companies. What can we have in place before a crisis or what we might term an opportunity comes about? Either of you.
Go ahead. Okay. As a Buddhist, I try to practice the idea that there is no before and there's no future, there's only now. So what can we do now? And as Karen said earlier, like, if this is not an urgent moment, I don't know what is. And I take that to mean, like, if we think about the before times, was it really a before time? Because you can just keep going back and back and back and know that there was oppression and harm. So one of the things that I believe has us at the ready now is through relationships and building community and not being siloed. Artists over here, activists and organizers over here, policy experts and legal experts over here, electeds over there, community somewhere over here. That's not going to work when a crisis comes, because we're all in it together. And if there are no relationships or networks or collaborations or coalitions built amongst these different groups of people, it'll make it a lot harder. So that is one of the things that is magical about Broadway Advocacy Coalition, where I am the executive director. I just joined September of 24, 2 months before President Trump was elected. And what drew me to the organization was the way in which artists are working together with organizers and activists and legal experts to create works of artivism that move legislative campaigns and policy change. Just a little bit about the origin story, if you don't know about BAC, which through its work was honored with a Tony Award in 2020. It was founded the summer of 2016 by a group of actors and dancers backstage of a production of Shuffle Along, a Broadway play starring Audra McDonald and directed by George C. Wolfe. It was a play showcasing Black excellence and joy, and that summer of July 2016 was the same summer that 3 Black men were killed by the police within 3 days of each other, within 3 days of one another. And the actors backstage were lamenting at how none of the Broadway producers had checked in on them. There were no statements made. One of them posted on Facebook, there's Broadway for Trader Joe's workers, Broadway for Shark Week, Broadway for Thanksgiving. Where is Broadway for Black Lives? And when she came back to her computer a few days later, her email was filled with, like, what are we going to do? Let's do something. And that is what started the coalition. Now, the actors realized that there are organizers and activists who have been working on police brutality and systemic racism for decades. And they, as actors, didn't necessarily have the skill set for base building, developing a campaign, mobilization, all of the things that organizers do. So rather than trying to do it by themselves, they're like, let's partner with the organizers and activists who are directly impacted and who've been doing it for generations and bring our powers together.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and Happy New Year. Okay, getting closer. Happy New Year. Okay, so I want to start with, and I'll probably return to examples as we go through our panel, a couple of philosophy foundations that I've developed that are common sense, but in my mind, I use it as the guidepost for almost all the advocacy that I do, which has been in March, 33 years at Americans for the Arts and the Arts Action Fund. So number one is no story without data, and no data without a story. And I've learned through trial and error of what works when trying to influence decision makers. They love the data for being able to write a letter back to their constituents of why they voted a certain way or why they get up and make a speech of why it's important to support the arts. But their hearts and minds are not changed without a story, that it comes from their community, which goes to my next point, which is all politics are local. And it doesn't matter if, and I don't, Tip O'Neill invented that term, not me. And it comes from looking at both very local politics, regional politics, state-level politics, and national politics in terms of the decision makers that you're trying to influence, whether it's to prevent something bad from happening or to promote something good to be advanced. If you're dealing with federal elected officials, well, they're voted by local voters in their district or state. If you're dealing with state legislators, they're voted by the same local elected leaders. The only thing that changes is their geographic division and which zip codes fall into their voting pool, and that's what they care about. And the same thing applies to local city council politics. It comes down to the local little geographic area within that city or within that county that matters. So understanding geopolitics and the importance of that is so important in terms of being efficient in being an advocate. So you're not, bringing on an advocate to go talk to a particular council member, and that council member says, okay, where are you located? They might do a little song and dance. They'll be like, oh, well, councilman, we're just outside your district. But our data of ticket sales and members of our organization show that 5,600 people live and are voters in your district. That's how you play the song and dance. And then a couple more things is your foundation of everything you should talk about is based on your mission. Because the mission was created to, if you are a nonprofit, let's first start with that. If you are a nonprofit, your mission was based on some kind of an educational purpose to serve the general public of some sort. You decide how big your general public is. And you always have to come back to that. And once you start veering off that, your arguments become weaker and weaker. It's your foundation. It's not your main talking point. It might be, an economic impact argument, but it has to still return back to your mission. That's what changes the hearts and minds of elected officials. That's why those stories were important to complement the data impacts. And then finally, it reinforces Elsa's point, and that is, make your friends and connections before you need them. if you have to decide, do a board of, the worst case scenarios that could happen in the future. And then it's whether it's the fire department says you have to close down the venue because you have too many people in it, or it's a city council member who wants to change the funding that you've relied on for 30 years to just saying economics are too bad in the city, we have to cut this off. And then you just keep on going up the various different levels of decision makers that could really pull the rug out from underneath you. And you have to make a decision and a grid of who are those important elected leaders or appointed leaders, like a city manager or something like that, who are influential on what I need to get done or to protect what I have done. And this can also apply to private performing, presenting organizations, individual artists. Within you, you have a mission of why you have created yourselves and why you are producing the kind of work you are. Always return back to the heart and soul of your raison d'etre of why you are. Thank you.
It makes me think about, first of all, it makes me think about my dad, because my dad came up with this thing called 4 Ps, which he taught all of us and his grandkids, and it was planning, preparation, oh God, I always stumble on the third one.
People?
No. No. It's planning, preparation, persistence, and patience. And the planning is what we're just now talking about, and I think my biggest takeaway from this is that, yes, we have to establish those connections before you need them. And that goes alongside of what you're saying, Nina, is that you have to understand your mission. And I think it applies whether it's a nonprofit or not. We all have missions. And if we don't, then we're just flailing, right? We're going in all sorts of different directions. So I think this applies to whatever your organization is.
That's right.
So this is what we do in order to meet the moment. But what happens when that moment is upon us? And now we are confronted. And in today's world, we're confronted daily with something else that is supposed to be a crisis, although oftentimes they're not. I have one question that'll lead to another one, but one is, how do we focus our attention when we have all these myriad of pseudo-crises meant to deter us? How do we focus our attention on what is important to our constituency? And I'm so glad that you defined this point about all politics are local, and knowing who are the key people in your local area. How do we keep our focus, or how do we find our focus?
It's hard, particularly when you have limited resources and other wonderful organizations and presenters are competing for the same resources, the same audience members, the same donors. When we got the Tony, and this predates me, I was not a part of the organization then, what happened was we became something to other people that we never were. So we received the Tony Award, and suddenly to Broadway, to producers, we were the go-to organization to provide cultural competency and DEI workshops for Broadway productions that weren't treating brown and black people right. And that was never our mission, to teach workshops to show white Broadway how to better treat us. We were trying to create justice and liberation for our people, for everyone. And Yet that is where the resources were, and it kind of, for a small organization, young people not just coming into this world, there was a little bit about chasing the dollar for a minute, which created mission drift, which Nina reminded us earlier, always go back to your mission. And so 3-4 years later, after the murder of George Floyd is long out of the headlines, and the interest in racial justice funding is no longer interesting to funders and Broadway, we were stuck. So, but there are always other crises. There's crises of language, like do you say defund the police or police reform? Things are happening all over the world, and people are choosing sides, and people want arts organizations to put out a statement and to say something. And then there are donors who, and board members who are like, we cannot put a statement out about the conflict in the Middle East, about Sudan, about, like, that is not our lane, or something like that. And if you can imagine, for an organization of 5, like, having all of those conversations with all of those different stakeholders. What about our programming? What about the play that we're supposed to do next week? Like, it's a lot, and there's this desire, of course, for us to do it right, and to get it right, and to not mess up. And so for me, when there's a third rail around language or communities who might think differently, I think of 3 things, and that is, like, my baseline is it in alignment with the sanctity of human life? Does it value human life? And then we are on the side of that, all human beings. The second thing is the person speaking and where we're getting our stories, and the center of this performance or poem or play, does it center those who are directly impacted? Is that where the art begins? Not something about them that was created without them, but it's centered in their storytelling and their sharing and their truth. And then the last one is, does it offer dignity and respect for all people? Not just one group of people over another, but for everyone. And so that helps me in making these decisions about statements and whether to sign a larger statement or going in this direction or that.
Under that notion of keeping that clarity under pressure, I will reinforce that point that was also reinforced by Els of your mission, because what happens in those moments is multiple things are happening at the same time. And one of the things to have in place, I've already talked about, start with your mission and let that guide you, is having a rapid response both at a staff team level and at your board level, or whatever your leadership level is, of having some kind of small group, not a huge group, 3 people, something like that. You don't need a professional PR team, but you might need some kind of communications person. But you just need people who know that you have to drop what you're doing right now, and you have to help us decide how we're going to respond to this moment. And it could be something easy, like a press statement, and what is our perspective. And Els talked about some very good things about values. What are your values? Which is essentially what she articulated. That's what helps keep you on message. And it does help you with your priorities and how you decide what you're going to do. But you just need a small group of people who are part of your rapid response team. And maybe they never even meet for the entire year because nothing happened. But you want them in place, you want them trained to know what to do, what questions to ask, like having those types of general questions of what to do, what to ask yourselves in a crisis will help guide them, and they know and they've accepted way in advance that this is part of their responsibility when we need a rapid response. The second thing is about one of the points that I made, one of the last points that I made in the first question, that is make your friends and connections before you need them. So imagine you meeting someone for the first time and saying, this is an emergency and I need you. Well, who are you? Let's start with that. Who are you? Where are you from? What do you represent? What can you tell me that will help me realize that I can trust you, that you are important? Because they are also decision makers are constantly being bombarded by requests. And the requests that come from someone they have already established a trusting relationship goes to the top. Okay? So among your rapid response team, and one of the best uses of a board of directors is to divvy up, okay, here is a list of 8 people that are key influencers to either help prevent something really bad from happening, be a spokesperson so that their voices get quoted in newspapers or TV shows or whatever the venue is, or they are at the governing table, whether it's a legislative table, an executive table. They are at the table to be the voice in the inside when no one else is at the table, behind closed doors. So you need to figure out who, it's not a lot. I have yet to see ever a program, and I'm talking, I work on the national level, so you might imagine, oh my God, you have so many decision makers. No, it really comes down to less than 10. And that's the way, that's just a basic formula, and it's going to be true at the local level, it's going to be true at the state level, regional level, and at the national level. There are about 10 who are the absolute influencers that are going to make decisions for what happens on the outcome of a particular crisis. So you need to figure out who your 10 influencers, or less, it could be less, who they are, and divvy up your board members to say, okay, while you are a board member, you are responsible for this particular decision maker. You are responsible for this. Maybe they can take on a few. So that you have made your friends and connections. Someone has understood your mission and your impact within the community that the decision maker represents. Not just who you represent, who the decision maker represents, which goes back to my point about geopolitics.
So many good nuggets here. I want to ask a quick question. How many people here are presenters? And how many people here are agents or managers? Okay. And how many people have less than 5 on their staff? Okay, great. Because what they are both talking about are still actionable in our small spaces. I have a staff of 1, and yet I represent artists. Artists are in the same boat, as we've just seen with the whole Kennedy Center run of folks who are making decisions. And those are all crises in their own area. So I love the idea about knowing in advance who you can go to in your list of influencers, but you can apply that to your area as well. So let's not think in terms of, oh, well, I don't have a staff or I'm not a PAC. It's you still have a company or a firm, whether you are an artist or whether you are an agent manager, that is going to be confronted with these same questions, these same issues. So we have to do the work as well. Who are our people? Because it doesn't have to be internal to us. So thank you very much for those guidelines. I'm getting inspired, as you can tell. I want to sort of, excuse me, move on, if only my phone would cooperate. How we turn these crises, thank you, how we turn these crises into opportunity, into leverage, into us being in control of the situation, as opposed to being the victim or as opposed to being the recipient. And because a lot of these crises, especially those ones that are manufactured to take our eye off the ball, to take us away from our mission, to take us away from our constituency that we've now defined as being local, are to take us away from doing our work. So how do we can turn that around. We've got the power for that. So let's talk a little bit about maybe a couple of examples when those moments have occurred, whether it's as simple as a financial situation within an organization, whether it's a social instance, as Elsa talked about George Floyd, and we have many more examples now with ICE. How do we turn some of these situations, which are dire and aggressive and scary and threatening, to a place of where we can do our best work? Is that a big question?
Yeah. I love that you called it a manufactured crisis, because it often is. You all remember in February when the NEA announced that we would need to sign a statement if we were to receive our grants to say that we are not supporting gender ideology and we're not using inclusive language and not supporting inclusivity. You would need to sign it in order to get the grant, and that was scary, and we saw grants being canceled, and I was, to your point of not telling a story without data, I don't actually have the number, but I had access to I was on a listserv that had everyone share the grants that they lost on a Google spreadsheet, and the numbers just kept adding up, and it was millions of dollars. And I knew that we needed, I'm sorry, am I yelling? We needed to do something.
You're not.
Again, we're a small organization, a staff of 5. What could we possibly do with these millions of grants in a good year? We're a $1 million organization in a good year. So it's nothing in comparison to what the NEA gives out. But I'm remembering a quote from Stephen McKinley Henderson, as quoted by Stephen Adly Girgis, when he said, "You can only do so much, but you can do so much." And so in my small organization, what I did in February, our fiscal year ends in September, I went through our budget and went line by line and determined what hasn't been spent yet, and then took the money that hasn't been spent yet and pooled it into a rapid response micro grant, very micro, for artists who are doing work that is pushing a social justice cause. And I was able to use that to fundraise to institutional funders, donors, to also contribute, because donors and funders weren't responding before, but now with this, and I'm like, look, I'm trying to pull this thing, and it's like this. So that got me some more money, and we were able to make 5 grants to 5 artists doing excellent work around affordable housing, community healing. Less than a drop in the bucket to what folks were losing with the NEA, but we can't sit and watch and allow leadership to take what is ours. And that's how I used that moment.
Oh. Absolutely fantastic. And it's really the implementation of what we've been talking about, making it local, making it mission-driven. And there's creativity in this, obviously. It's like, okay, what do I have? How can I better use it? I love that. Nina, you had talked earlier in another conversation about creating a muscle and pushing back through legal means. Can you talk a little bit about
Sure.
that?
On a multi-front, I'm just going to build on the example that you provided of all of a sudden NEA grants being canceled or rescinded, offers that had just been made under the Biden administration in the first days of January, announcing a whole bunch of new awards that were being rescinded as soon as the Trump administration came into play. So there are a few things happening. There are behind-the-scenes things that you don't see me doing, but I'm definitely doing, of working within the context that I have even of this new Trump administration, of trying to get a better understanding of why, where are the openings to change things, how can we educate people, how can we reassure grantees of what's to come, and most importantly, trying to influence any policies, softening them more, making them less. Like if they say you can't do DEI, I'm going to phrase it this way, the new administration came in and said you can't do illegal DEI. Well, that was a term no one's ever heard of, right? Illegal DEI. And, I'm going to translate it to you, and that is doing outward work that only benefits BIPOC and other types of minority races, and prevents Caucasians from also being able to be involved in those. That's essentially, in a nutshell, not legally in any book, but that's essentially what it is. And so, bringing the right lawyers to the webinars that I was doing pretty regularly to help them understand what that means. Does it mean you have to scrub your website? No. But what are the little things that would be considered illegal DEI so that you can continue your mission of wanting to do DEI work without falling into the pitfalls of what is illegal DEI under this administration, not yet constitutionally proven by the Supreme Court and decided. So it's the executive branch, storming the gates and saying, this is what we want to do, and we're all waiting to see if the Supreme Court agrees. A Supreme Court primarily controlled by Trump. So we'll see what happens on that front, but for now, that's what it means. And so when these decisions were being made, and then at the same time, DOGE is happening and going into every single federal agency, and trying to make big cuts. And executive orders are coming out by the dozens every day and trying to analyze what happens there, and that's where the DEI and transgender issues came up, is getting organizations that are being impacted by this, whether it was the NEH grants that never were received, whether it was the museum and libraries never getting their money because there was an executive order to completely eliminate the Institute of Museum and Library Services. By the way, that is still intact, even though there was an executive order to get rid of it. And with our lobbying and other groups lobbying, including APAP, we were able to secure bipartisan control in Congress to not only keep it funded, 0 cuts in budget to those agencies for this coming their fiscal 26, which had already started. So that's all great, but there were lawsuits that needed to happen to get that what was considered fiscal year 2025 money. Some of it already granted by the agency, but not given out. And they wanted to just stop that money from going. And so very good lawsuits were put together. I think the big heroes in the Trump 2 administration so far are the state's attorney generals, especially in blue states, that are taking on these radical initiatives that the Trump administration is putting forward so quickly. I mean, things are happening rapidly. And I feel like these state attorneys general are really impressive, very good. ACLU has been extremely helpful in these kind of rapid responses. They are the ones that initiated the lawsuit along with theater groups, especially in Rhode Island and TCG, of filing a lawsuit on the transgender issue that was part of the NEA grants thing that got eliminated as a result of the ACLU win that happened a couple of months ago. And the state attorneys general got all of the Institute of Museum and Library funds reinstated. Another group got the NEH humanities grants reinstated. It's chaos for several months until the courts can go through these processes. But the key was finding the right kinds of attorneys and groups that would represent them. So would I have ever thought of putting the state attorney general in my key decision maker list of 10? Never before, but now they're at the top 5. So things change, and all communities, not just the arts. I mean, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting was completely eliminated, and it's not coming back during this administration. It's just not coming back. So we're hearing stories of what's happening at local radio and public stations, especially in some of the more rural areas that can't get the money made up for by the private sector. And that private sector is like responding to the current crises. Will it be sustained in future years? I don't know, but I know it will dissipate a little bit. Okay, so those things were happening, but also kind of similar, but at a kind of a larger scale, because we have some access to a lot of foundations of what you were talking about, of doing something as a result of that, is we worked with, and I have to say, an anonymous foundation that didn't want to share credit for what they did, but we worked with them in getting the names of all the organizations whose grants were rescinded or canceled, and didn't get any win with appealing the process. And the foundation, through us, we worked out a situation. First, we had to secure those names because FOIA was not allowed, the Freedom of Information Act, FOIA. We couldn't get those names because they kept on saying, oh, we have to wait for the appeal process, we have to wait for this, we have to wait for that. Well, I can also do things behind the scenes. And one way or another, we were able to get the list of all those groups and offered them half the money. So several millions of dollars were distributed to those organizations that had their rug pulled out from underneath them.
Before we move on, can I say one thing just to keep alive the theme of building your relationships before you need them?
Yes.
And with what Nina's talking about with Public Broadcasting Corporation and whole swaths of staff going away at the Kennedy Center and people leaving the NEA because of the new leadership or the new direction, I felt like a pit in my stomach because you spend so much time building those relationships and then they're gone. But then I realized that you still have a relationship with that person. Institutions are people. And even when all of these scary things are happening, that's why it's so important to have that relationship, because I still know you, I still know you, and you're gonna go somewhere. You have to leave this institution, but what are institutions if not people?
Well, especially according to John Roberts. So here's, thank you for getting it. It segues into our next topic, which is about, mobilizing the right voices, but it's what we've been talking about the whole time. One of my immediate takeaways from this last section is about, yes, who are the attorneys that I need to be in touch with in advance to establish a relationship with? If it's not the Attorney General, maybe it's the city attorney. Maybe it is definitely ACLU, but maybe there are other organizations that work on behalf of the aggrieved outside of the arts. And it is going back to how we started this, understanding your mission and understanding that all politics are local, but understanding how do we make someone care about what it is we do, and it's finding that access point that you guys have both laid out, and it is it's always about relationships. We know that, we're here in this room.
Karen, I want to add another superstar organization, like an ACLU, and that's one of the ones that I contribute a charitable contribution to every year, and that's NAACP's Legal Defense Fund.
Yes.
Superstars.
Yeah, absolutely, same. It's amazing the kind of work that they do that you have no idea, because it doesn't all have to do with Black people. It has to do with poor people. And it started with the economies of scale for people, and it sort of branched out into that. So thank you for that reference. Can we talk just quickly, we've already mentioned how important it is to establish these relationships, but Els, you had also talked in another conversation about training arts industry to recognize their own power. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, when you think about even off-Broadway in New York City alone, that's 8,000 jobs and millions of dollars to the economy. And that is not only actors that you know, but the stagehands and everyone, the administrators, the nonprofit administrators, the fundraisers that go into creating what we end up seeing. If we can tap into that people power to vote toward affordable housing or toward a progressive mayor, that is a lot of power. And I think that there's so much passion within folks who work in the arts and not a clear path to use that power for the things that are important to them. Like, they don't know how to do it, they don't know what to do. So we want to provide an easy entry point for people to participate and to be civically engaged and to be included. We want full participation of every person who wants to come, cast a wide net and be in conversation with us. What was the second part of that question?
It really is about empowerment.
Yes. Yeah. So we're thinking about bringing the capacity of the beauty of stories and telling stories and bringing it to activists and organizers to strengthen their campaigns, and then bringing the data that Nina brings in with lawyers and researchers so that there's data that is strengthening the stories. Imagine the power that is there. Right now, our methodology is called the Theater of Change. It is housed now at Columbia University. We would love to be we would love to be at your organization. We would love to be in organizations across the country. The approach works. It bringing together those three communities for 3 different issue areas each year. And then it concludes with a kind of presentation or a pitch where folks talk about the piece of artivism that they would like to create to push a particular campaign, and then we fundraise for it. Generally, our organization has the funds to support one of the pitches. It's like, what is that show called? Shark Tank?
Shark Tank.
But we want to do all of them. We would, of course, but we just don't have the support for it so far. So I'm losing the.
Well, I think what my takeaway from this is this model that you guys have created is something that's replicable in all of our local areas. And if it starts with shooting an email to Elle saying, okay, how did you do that? Can we have a 1-hour consultation about applying this in our area, and then you can do it regionally? It really is about those connections that we've been, if that's the one takeaway from this conversation, it is about connections and data and how they could come between. We have about 8 minutes left, and I'd like to open it up for questions. Or if you have a statement, keep it to 30 seconds, but questions are preferable. Yes, sir.
Sorry, it's a statement. I would urge both organizations to find ways to connect the membership that is spread out across the country locally, so that you can, I'm from Los Angeles, so let me know who are the others who have joined the Arts Action Fund so that we can connect with each other and become stronger in our community. And I would urge the same across. The other side.
Go ahead.
So thank you for that question. So Americans for the Arts is the big 501c3, and a subsidiary is the Arts Action Fund. But the Arts Action Fund has 400,000 members. It is primarily individuals, but it does have organizational members as well. And I think what you're suggesting is there a way to maybe publish who are I don't think I can do individuals, but organizational members? Is that maybe what you're thinking, so you know who else is part of the Arts Action Fund to create a local bond?
Well, Los Angeles has a very strong Arts for LA.
Yes, it does, which is a strong member of ours.
But not every city does. And if there were ways that the people, and it's back to individuals, if there's ways that those individuals can find each other, then they can start identifying who are the locals, who are the statewide people that they need to be contacting, representing their area, to be the advocates for the non-national policies that we all have to worry about as well.
Right. But you can imagine, for privacy purposes, I can't let people know who the individuals are. But what we do to help is, if a community-based organization wants to do something like you're saying, what I am willing to absolutely do is send out an email to that group. I can say, okay, these zip codes, I want all our members in those zip codes to send it and say, this group is trying to reach out to create a meeting or this or that, whatever it is. If it's a goal that we certainly support, I'm willing to send out that email to get the ball rolling, but I can't force them to go do it.
If there was a checkoff on the membership where it says, do you mind if I share your contact information, I'd check it off.
Okay, good.
It may be something that Napama can help with, where we would ask the question of our members if you are willing to participate, or if you are already involved in a local situation and are willing to share your name. That may be something that we can work on.
Right, that would be great. And just so you know, or remind those who don't know, membership into the Arts Action Fund is free. Our goal is to get a 1 million-person army to create a really serious voting bloc, because as a 501c4 organization, we're allowed to get involved in elections. In fact, our history is, I mentioned that we got started about 20 years ago. That is the time of the notorious Newt Gingrich and Contract with America, which had designated to eliminate things like the National Endowment for the Arts. And we were trying like crazy. The election had just happened. The majority control changed overnight, unexpectedly, from Democrat to Republican in both the House and the Senate. all at the same time. And we were caught in a bad situation because we were trying to make friends with these newly elected leaders who had signed the contract with America. Not during the campaign when they were seeking friends and meeting with groups and constituents to understand what their story is and how they're important to the voting constituency that this person was trying to get elected for. What we realized at Americans for the Arts is that it is very hard to influence a newly elected member who's already made their friends during the campaign trail. And you coming and knocking on their door saying, please help us. Who are you? Who's in my district that matters? I mean, it was really an uphill battle. We made it, but it was an uphill battle. And that's why the Arts Action Fund was born, is to start getting involved in the electoral advocacy work, in being smart about targeted areas, battleground states. We can't do the entire country, but we can be very smart about where we focus in trying to develop friends and connections for those at the local level. It's not me just doing it at the national level. I engage the local level and say, okay, I'm coming to your community for a very specific reason. This is a battleground congressional district, and let's first all come together in partnership and have a meeting that says, why is it important? Why is it important to vote? Why is it important for you to get others to vote and understand what's at stake? So we're ready for Election Day, which kind of gets your point, but it's more targeted in terms of where we focus and proactively are doing it.
I want us to create a play that showcases that, that shows that. I would be remiss, because we are almost out of time.
No, we're actually, I misread it. We actually do have time.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to be a little bit specific as to what our work looks like, because I've been speaking in generality. And so what these examples of Artivism looks like is we work a lot around the carceral system. And as you know, many folks who come out of prison have a hard time finding housing. Landlords do not want to rent to formerly incarcerated people. So our artistic director worked with a group of formerly incarcerated men and women to create their stories and share their stories in a monologue-style presentation. And we took that presentation on tour across 4 boroughs of New York City, and that resulted in 90 leases for folks who were previously unable to get housing for themselves and their families. So that was a huge win. Another thing that we work on are these 2 parole bills in Albany, the Elder Parole Bill and the Fair and Timely Parole Bill. And our artists worked on creating a giant puppet of Governor Hochul to bring to Albany during our lobby day, because many of the electeds wouldn't speak to us and wouldn't sign the bill endorsing it. And so our giant puppet of Kathy Hochul had pictures of the majority leaders who we were targeting to sign the bill, and was like walking around, and that is how we got the signatures. Because when they saw themselves in the halls with a giant puppet holding a picture of them, they're like, what is this? What is going on? So theater can be used for bird dogging and all of those wonderful tactics.
I like to think of it as theater can be used to affect change, because 90 leases is astounding. I think that is fantastic. And I love how you connected the narrative to the data. I'm curious, what happens after the crises passes? How do we maintain momentum? What do we do? Sometimes it feels like there's a lag, and then it's hard to gear up again. What do we do to keep people engaged, or at least aware, interested?
I can start and saying that one of the things that we do is we keep our 400,000 members informed with information as we learn it, as we analyze it, as we envision what could be obstacles and opportunities, and we keep them informed along the way so that they feel like stakeholders. And that is the key. If you can get your constituents, your customers, to, instead of being transactional ticket buyers, into stakeholders of your existence and of value and philosophy of what the arts mean to your community, it's a winning proposition.
I'm curious to know if because that is something that we talk about a lot, about turning our community into actively engaged, informed people. I wonder if anyone in the audience has had that experience or is beginning that kind of discussion. Is there somebody in the back raising their hand, or is that just, yes, please. Can you stand up? Oh, okay, great, there's a mic.
Thank you. I'm actually not from the art space. I'm from the civic space, looking into the art space. And
welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here, and I was excited to see so much emphasis in this conference on building civic infrastructure. And so a lot of what we're trying to do is pull civic organizations locally together to build civic hubs. And what we're realizing now is that it's still kind of wonky and process-oriented, and really the soul of it is going to come from the arts. So what we want to do is pull arts organizations locally into this process as well. And these civic hubs will be like, places for civic processes, like including deliberative democracy and so forth, but also for advocacy. So would love to pull in all these advocacy elements as well. It won't just be doing arts advocacy, it'll be doing advocacy on whatever issues that the community brings up. But I think in theory, it's a powerful way to bring lots of values-aligned stakeholders together in the locality. So it's still, a lot of these, we haven't yet fully engaged the arts on a local level, but this is something we want to start doing.
Can you give us your name and...
Oh, sure, sorry. My name's Vinay Orakondiam. My organization is Better Together America.
And where are you based?
I'm based in DC, but our organization's based out of Colorado, but we do work everywhere.
So it's a national organization?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Happy to come chat more about it. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that makes me think, too, about, we had mentioned our local arts organizations. Almost every city, every urban area has a cultural arts division. And I think a lot of times we look at them for purely arts relationships, promotion or marketing, that kind of thing. And really, we should be looking at them as stakeholders, as one of your 10 people on your list, and establishing that relationship early on to talk about the crises issue, to talk, before you need it. It's almost like looking at some of these existing organizations in a different way, because we do have a shared purpose. And I think about LA in particular. A year ago, exactly, with the fires, and then 6 months later with the ICE invasion. And had we had some of those relationships established previously to that, the response could have been different. And certainly, hopefully, if we work on that now, we can prevent some of the lags and some of the rumors that affect us all, and really give factual information. So great, thanks for speaking up. Anyone else have a question? Yes, in the back.
I don't have a question so much as I really appreciate the identification of stakeholders in the organization and also the identification of the artists that are local to the process. I wanted to identify an organization that sort of hybrids this and has been doing it for a little bit. It's the Center for Performance and Civic Practice, the cpcp.org. It was mostly led by Michael Road for a good period of time. And what they do is they sort of use those stakeholders or make community footholds and help you communicate how you can better practice this communication between connections of arts as a civic resource and vice versa. And it's been, I went through a training with them. It's fantastic, and I just want to put that out there for other folks who are interested and excited about the opportunity to connect. It brings you, I don't know what the opportunities are there right now, but it's really great because they sort of walk you through step by step of exactly what we've been talking about today. And so I just wanted to put that out there for people.
And your name?
Jeffrey Moser, and I'm from Milwaukee Repertory Theater.
Excellent.
What a great theater. Thank you.
cpcp.org. Excellent. That's great information. And it seems to me that there's probably other organizations like that. So if we do a search for it, it's probably going to bring up some other folks. And we had talked earlier, someone had asked about this, in some ways, access to a database, and this is really our opportunity to start developing that database of resources as well as organizations, so that we can create a link and we can create this opportunity for us to connect in advance.
Please tell Chad I said hi, who's the head of the Milwaukee rep. He used to be part of Americans for the Arts. And I just wanted to add that a term that we had coined that represents a lot of the work that Michael Rhodes had done is animating democracy.
Say it again?
Animating democracy. And really incorporating artists, especially theater artists, in highlighting and kind of putting up a mirror with original scripts and things of what's going on in the community, showing different perspectives, showing how to come together in dialogue.
I love this. Go ahead. Oh, okay. I love this because I'm a note taker, so I have to write it down so that it sort of implants on my brain. That's how I learn. And several of the things I've learned today have to do with how we become better human beings and how we practice humanity. And for me, it is, yes, from the practical of no story without data, no data without a story. But it really starts with the theme of establishing your connections and understanding who you need to help tell that story and to help gather that data. And then finding those people who can share that. And I mean, just today, I've learned about the local cultural arts organizations, the organization that, cpcp.org, the idea that all politics are local, that crises of language, I love that, because we can internalize what that means and apply it to our own situation. And this last one of animating democracy, how powerful is that? That's something we can do in our own space, in our own family, and expand it from there. So I want to thank Nina. I want to thank, this is a great way to start a Sunday morning that is traditionally held for many people, a time to convene and a time to share and a time to testify. And I feel like that's what's been done this morning.
Can
Please,
I add something?
Absolutely.
Something that we are leaning more into that historically had not been a focus of the way we do advocacy in terms of there's messaging, there is who your target audience is. Those are all the key things that you want to focus on. But also who's delivering the message, which is what you just said a moment ago that I wanted to highlight, that we're doing a little bit differently. So we will always have a focus on training the leadership of cultural organizations who are leaders within their local community, their state community, their regional community, because they can speak about a more global perspective of what's happening when they're talking to their elected leaders. And for me, I'm specifically focused on national with U.S. members of Congress. But where the difference is that we're going is that we are now training the beneficiaries of that art that's happening in these communities and why it's important to them. Now, that may sound like, you know, maybe something very obvious and something that a lot of groups have been doing, but I don't think a lot of national groups have been doing it, and I'm going to phrase it that way in just specifically our organization so I don't misspeak on what others are doing. But for instance, we do something called fly-ins. We used to have something called National Arts Advocacy Day, but we saw that we had to be a little bit more focused. And we found that our staff members, our government affairs team, it was stronger if we could accompany these meetings. So we couldn't handle a lot at one moment. We could handle, you know, doing maybe 80 meetings in a day. Which we typically would do and do. And so we paid to have people come in to be a representative of that congressional member, whether it's senator or a congressional district, to come in and speak to them. And so now where we could only afford one person, we're now bringing in two. One is that leader who is a leader within the community and things like that. But the second person that we're now bringing in to train are, you know, the mother whose kids, or maybe they even bring their kids sometimes, because they want to. They said, I'll spend the money and I'll bring the kid too. Who has been the beneficiary of some incredible after-school program that was provided by the local symphony or the local theater that did an extension program. Or it was a community member who participated in acting classes that were really instrumental in their life. Someone who can talk passionately about how the arts made a difference in their personal life and why it's important to have these kinds of programs surviving and living and why it makes a better community through the arts. And that is the way we are moving in that direction, and maybe it might be helpful to all of you at your local and state levels.
I mean, none of you would be in this room this morning at 9 o'clock if you were not at some point moved by something artistic that you experienced in a room that put you on a trajectory to have you here right now. For me, hearing a young poet spit a slam poem about her experience growing up in an immigrant family is what made the arts personal to me. Before the arts was this thing, this amazing, beautiful, abstract thing over there, but I was like, oh, the arts are for me. And so I love that. And Karen, bringing, again, the humanity of this and how important it is. When I think about the violence that is happening, the decisions that are being made, policies around trans people, we know that the people making those policies have not included trans people in making those decisions. The man who shot and killed Renee Nicole Good, I can assume that he's never sat in a theater and watched a story unfold about immigration or incarceration to a point that moved him to tears and was in his mind for weeks. Like things, the arts, the way that it moves you, the way that we all know this language, we have it with us. We need to make that available to more people. Imagine like all of the violence and oppression and the horrific atrocities that are happening if those people had exposure to art. Now, don't come for me and be like, well, Hitler was a musician and he loved Wagner, and in fact, he used music to invade, da-da-da-da. Like, but I'll just play that back for you slowly. He used music to support his ideology and his vision for the Third Reich. That is how powerful it is. So let's use it for our campaigns, for our purposes, for our good, which includes everybody, no exceptions.
We have to end on that note, because that is the powerful statement. I want to thank all of you guys for being here and absorbing this information and taking it with you and sharing it at some point throughout the day. I also want to thank our panelists, Els, Cuya Jones. I mean, this is, it's just very, very, very moving. And I want to thank Nina Ozlu-Tunceli. The two of them combined are such a great balance. And I just am glad to be sitting in the middle. Thank you all. Please go with joy, go with light, and go with an open mind and an open heart. Thank you.